Guys, this week we're going to look at differing abilities or special needs. So we're going to look at supporting families with children who have special needs, and then families with the parent or the guardian has a disability. So there's families where children have special needs, and then there's families where the parent or a guardian or an adult member of the family has a disability themselves. So working with children, a differing ability is a special need or a delay in an area of development. So a delay in physical or cognitive or social or emotional. It's a process of identifying, assessing, and providing services as well. And I did this before I came over to start teaching at community college. And so we have quite a few. So about 8% of the population get some kind of disability services under IDEA, which is the individual development and education. I'm totally blanking on what it is, but it's a federal law that provides for educational services for children. Most children have some kind of a specific learning disability like dyslexia, maybe ADHD, maybe an auditory processing disorder, something that kind of impacts their cognitive development. So that's about 35%. About 20% of the people who get special ed have a speech impairment. So my daughter is one of them. She has speech therapy because she has problems with articulation. So instead of Rachel, it would be Rachel. So she's 8 and she goes once a week to get some speech therapy done. A health impairment, which might be like spina bifida, it might be diabetes, asthma, things like that. Then about 9% have autism or autism spectrum disorders. Then we have intellectual disabilities. So this might be kind of a lower IQ. So not like dyslexia where, you probably have a great IQ, but reading's hard because like the letters kind of move or they flip, something like that. And intellectual disability might be like a lower IQ and you're going to need more support. A developmental delay, so you might have issues in writing or talking or both in physical and in social emotional. You might have an emotional disturbance like bipolar or schizophrenia. And then some people have multiple disabilities like Down syndrome and autism. So that's some of the people who receive special ed services. How about race? So more African Americans, so about 8.5% of all of the students in the United States get special ed. American Indian have the most highest rates, so that's 13.3% of all American Indian students get special education services, so that is much higher than the national average. Black is 11.4, so once again, that's higher than the national average. Latino and white are right there at our national average, which makes more sense, and that's kind of what we'd like to see. If we were to take a race as a population, be more what it is for Latinos and whites. What these numbers are telling us is that more American Indian and Black students are getting special education, which means that they're most likely being targeted and diagnosed with something that they might not have. So maybe they are having a hard home life and that is coming out as being maybe angry. They might get a diagnosis of emotional disturbance when they don't really actually have that. And then Asian is about 4.2, and we would like to see that number higher. Actually, that means that these students are not being identified and supported with their special needs, because there's nothing wrong with having a special need. It just means that you need services and support. You need somebody like me to come to your house and help your parents. You need maybe physical therapy so you can get out of a wheelchair. You need speech therapy like my daughter so you can speak well. Some people with an intellectual disability are going to need more help. Some people with emotional disturbance might need medication and therapy for the rest of their life. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that you're bad or broken or hurt. It just means that you might need more support as well. And so we want to make these numbers around 8.5 because that would mean that it's fair and that people who are getting the services need the services. And it's not just a way to take children that are another race that maybe you don't understand and put them out of your classroom. So when children do have special needs, we want them to be in the least restrictive environments. So this means that the student should have the opportunity to be educated with non-disabled peers to the greatest extent possible. And that's why when I worked with children with special needs, I went to their house because that's the least restrictive environment. An infant and toddler, they should be home being educated by their parents, and that's what I was supporting. Once you go to school, though, you should be spending the most part of your day with your non-disabled peers. So that might mean that you need an aid, you have a special wheelchair, that we've made accommodations for you in the classroom. Most students with disabilities, about 48%, spend about 80% of their day in the classroom. So most of their day is in their regular classroom. And then some children, about 30%, are only there for less than half. And then about 23% are in special education classrooms for most of their day. But we would like most children to be in their mainstream classroom and not in the special ed classroom. Here we go, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. I knew I was gonna forget it, I always do, and that's why I made a slide just for this, because I always forget what that acronym means, but it is a federal law that provides for important education protections for about 6 million children. So that 8% translates to about 6.5 million children. This means that you get free and appropriate public education. So my daughter's speech therapy does not cost me anything because it is part of her needing special education services so she can grow up to talk well. And it might happen in the classroom as a least restrictive environment, or she might go with other friends from her class and they might go into the classroom and learn from a speech and language pathologist. They'll have kind of similar issues and they're learning together. Then they go back to their mainstream classroom. She's only out of the classroom like 30 minutes. So for my daughter, she uses IDEA in order to get a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. So we're gonna skip that type of stuff. And we're going to look at parents with disabilities. And this video right here, I will, special needs and inclusion, I will also stick this up online for you guys. It's about 25 minutes, but if you were looking to go into special needs, inclusion, or maybe work with children with special needs, I highly recommend watching this on your own time because it will talk about kind of jobs and ways that you can support children. So if that's something you're looking for, it's also a permit you can get an inclusion permit through the community colleges, and that might be really helpful for you guys as well. Then we're going to look at parents with disabilities. So this can be a differing ability. For a parent, can be a parent in a wheelchair, a parent who's deaf or blind, or both. A parent with mental health issues like bipolar or schizophrenia, addiction as well. Parents with a lower IQ, like maybe Down syndrome, and parents with autism as well. So I am going to play a little bit of this. This is parents talking about some of the issues when they have a special need themselves, but are also parents. Sorry, it's very 80s, 90s, I'm sorry. So I need to skip through so you don't have to listen to that kind of bad soft rock.
Children need.
Hello, everybody. I thought you were
I don't agree with this, but I think society's views on people with disabilities being the neediest citizens, how can they care for someone else who, when they're born, children are 100% dependent on you? And I think, you know, to have good supports in place, like around-the-clock care, PA care, and making it clear to your PA that you still have the role as parent in terms of discipline and other things, but that they might be the one to get the bottle or doesn't take away your bonding experience with your child. Can you ask Scott?
Hi.
What's your name?
Noah.
Who's your mom?
Mommy.
What's her name?
Mommy.
What's my real name? What do other people call me?
Jen.
Yeah. Where do I work?
Active living.
What do we do there?
Walk.
Mm-hmm. The kids really do it
So that's a mom who works, has 2 children, and is also in a wheelchair. She's talking about a PA, which is a personal assistant. Some people might need that. She doesn't have a lot of use of her hands, so probably fixing the bottle, like she said, being able to measure might be difficult. She would need maybe support from her spouse or partner, or from somebody who comes into the house to care for her as well. So a lot of time, there's a lot of removal rates for parents with special needs. A lot of times we don't see parents in wheelchairs or who are deaf as being competent parents when they just need a little bit of like support or help. So if you were deaf and your baby's crying, how would you know? Well, we have special lamps that will flash up and down. So they are kind of connected by voice to where the child is, like in a crib or somewhere else. So when the baby starts to cry, the lamp will recognize that sound. It's almost like one of those clap on, clap off ones, but it recognizes the sound of baby crying. And then it flashes, and then the parent who's deaf but can see will see that and then know that the baby is crying in their crib because they've woken up from nap. So we have a lot of this idea that parents with special needs shouldn't have custody of their children. And that's really, really more specific for people with psychiatric disabilities. So bipolar, depression, anxiety, psychosis as well. For some of those families, it's from 70 to 80%. And a lot of this is if the parent is not taking their medication, they're not going to their therapy, if they're not doing what they're supposed to for their own psychiatric disability, that might impact their ability to care for their child or be part of a family. Just because you have bipolar or depression, anxiety, or psychosis doesn't mean that you can't take care of a child. It just means that you need to manage your psychiatric kind of mental health issues so that you can be the best parent that you can be. And that can be hard to do. When the parent has an intellectual disability, so they have a lower IQ, 40 to 80% of the children might be removed from the home. And when the parent has a disability, which is physical, like that mom we just saw who's in a wheelchair, about 13% have kind of reported discriminatory treatment. So people at Child Protective Services just kind of assuming that they can't take care of it. Parents who are blind or deaf also report extremely high rates of child removal and loss of parental rights as well. So parents with disabilities are more likely to lose custody of their children after divorce. So if you have a special need and your spouse doesn't, a lot of times judges will give custody to the person who doesn't have special needs because they assume that that person will be a better caregiver. They're going to have difficulty in accessing reproductive health care and have significant barriers to adopting children. So if you were to go to a private adoption agency, they might not want to take you as a client. The state and the county would have to because it's open to all. But if you went to a private group, they might also just assume that you can't take care of children and not let you adopt children. So it's kind of a tightrope. So we're going from one extreme to the other. So we want to balance the right of parents to have custody and then the rights of the child to be protected and provided for and have the chance to form loving bonds with the family. So the parents should be seen as competent. They should be seen as being able to take care of their children unless they're doing something that is showing us that they don't have that ability. So if their mental health challenges are too much right now, they might need extra support from family members. They might need some support from the state in order to be the best parent that they can, because we don't want somebody who's deep in psychosis and imagining things and hearing things to be bringing up a child if they are not managing those symptoms. That can be very scary and frightening for the child. And we want children to be protected and provided for as well. So it's a give and take. But if we do have a family that has special needs, so mom or dad has one of the special needs I talked about, first we want to make sure that they get the first social service that they need. So if they have psychiatric issues, they need their mental health services. If they're blind and struggling, they need to go to blindness support. Riverside has a fantastic group that helps a lot. CPS, so Child Protective Services and Child Welfare Services, who are kind of responsible for maybe taking a child out of a home, need more training and knowledge and research in supporting the families who have disabilities. So more training in just because you're blind doesn't mean that you can't take care of a child. And then the knowledge to be able to support them, the blind parent, and getting the support that they need. some of the practical concerns of families is that families that might come into our school might have support people who help you, so that you might get driven around, you might get have somebody, a babysitter, come pick the child up, and so you might not see the parent with special needs as much as you might, because they might need to stay at home if there's not good ways for them to get in and out with their wheelchair. They might also get services from other people for cleaning or cooking or shopping. They don't typically help with the child, but they'll help with all of these other things and the transportation as well. So that is it for this week, and I think that's a really important topic. So children with special needs and supporting them in getting the education that they need, and seeing children as needing a few services in order to kind of reach their full potential, and then also parents as well who might have disabilities, and seeing them first as competent parents and linking them in with the services that they need so that they continue to be the best parent that they can. All right, guys, I will see you online.